Is this recording? Okay, so if this is recording, we're going to do some notes, personal notes. Okay, so what I'm thinking about is doing a YouTube video that explains some pro se cases based on constitutional civil rights. Obviously, we'll protect the names because we'll keep them confidential in order to protect the case that is currently open, because these are going to be open cases. And we can discuss where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. The accomplishments in the case, factual, in order to inform the public of the ongoing progress within our cases, the what not to do's and what the to do's that have led us to the progress we've had thus far as a ministry founded to guide the public, the poor, the oppressed, and the afflicted in the spirit of truth, in Jesus' name, for Jesus' will. And we have a multifaceted Christian organization, non-for-profit, that we originated with the intent to build two-story buildings across Florida. And in a nutshell, those two-story buildings on the second floor, they house homeless for approximately 6 months. And on the first floor, they have a restaurant or some sort of business that's for-profit. With the intentions of having the homeless work downstairs for 6 months. Within that 6 months, they'll get a check that's the equivalent of their minimum wage that they've worked for that 6 months, and then, which equates to about $6,000 or $7,000. Then they'll get help getting a car with their own $6,000 or $7,000, relocated into an apartment or housing of their choice, and pointed in the direction to a church that fits their profile. So with that being said, one of the things that we needed to do was not only form an organization that can facilitate that end result, but find a way to finance it. And without borrowing and taking on partners, what we found was that there was a big crisis in 2008 to 2000, and I'd say even now 16 and ongoing. But what happened was a lot of homeowners, we realized, were losing their homes across the country. This is a known fact due to negligence, fraud, illegal security trading, and wrongful foreclosure on a couple of the nation's leading lending institutions, which, just to name a few, were Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and JP Morgan, which is Chase. The federal government sued them in 2014 for wrongful foreclosure. They won the trial on that. They were convicted of this. And also the end of 2014, the beginning of 2015, for illegal security trading or fixing security rates with mortgage securities, and those mortgage securities didn't pay off, so that kind of led to the downfall of the market. The federal government did give them some bailout money, and come to find out, they were the problem, and they were the reason why they needed the bailout money. But with that being said, in 2015, July, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and JP Morgan, collectively with 11 other lending institutions, or 11 total, including them, put in a reserve of $3.6 billion collectively in order to pay an estimated 45 million homeowners for wrongful foreclosure. So, with that being said, again, we did find in our venture to find out how we could pay for these two-story buildings without taking loans or investment money. We found that by practicing our civil rights and becoming, which I am currently now, a civil rights advocate and humanitarian, that we could inform people of their rights and guide them in their individual cases of foreclosure to represent themselves according to their constitutional rights. And we found that we can be very effective in being advocates for pro se litigators. People that are representing themselves. And obviously, we stick to people that are representing themselves in foreclosure cases, especially against Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, and their subsidiaries. Okay, so what happened was in January of 2015, okay. My father-in-law, he was dying of lung cancer, and he had a reverse mortgage with Champion Mortgage. Now, he was in hospice, and they were foreclosing. So as I ventured into my first application of practicing civil rights in these type of cases, I come across a petition, and it was a petition of breach of trust with fraudulent intent. I had no other resources to tell me whether it was true other than the cases that it was stating. So I did my due diligence on it. I couldn't find anything to disprove it, so the only thing that I could do was apply it. And in January, what happened was my father-in-law, God bless his soul, he couldn't make it, couldn't get out of bed. He did suffer a stroke that caused him paralysis in his legs and in one of his arms, leaving him only movement with one arm. So he couldn't make it to the court hearing. So at that time, me and my wife were having a little bit of stress within the home. So I was staying in a place other than that home. We were together but separate, just because the home that we were living in was the same home that my father-in-law was dying in. So I'm sure you can imagine how stressful and emotional the situation was. So. Long story short, I heard from her and her father that they wouldn't be able to make the hearing, the foreclosure trial. So I went in because I didn't have too much study other than 48 hours on the petition, and with a little due diligence, I didn't want to apply it without knowing any further facts. So I went and I put in a motion to enlarge time. The motion in enlarge time was granted by the judge, and there was a trial set or continued till April, I want to say 14th, okay, of 2015. All right, so here comes April around, and again at April, I believe he could not make it, and I want to say he was still around at that time, but I have to look. But long story short, Georgia, which is my mother-in-law, we went down to the trial, and we argued the petition of breach of trust and fraudulent intent within that trial, because by that time I had another 3 months, couldn't disprove it. So the only thing that left me was to apply it, and really had no other choice because they were kicking a dying man out of his home that he lived in for 30 years and served his country very proudly. He was a military man. Well, yes, he was a military man that served in the Navy, okay, branch of the military. So. And then he worked on the steamships and worked the boilers. So he was a John Wayne fan, and we had our disagreements, but I respected the man very much so. So I did promise him I'd save his house, and I had no other sources, no financial resources to hire an attorney. from my research, they didn't really help much. They just bought some time, and then kind of you were in the same situation. So had no other hope, and couldn't disprove the petition. So there it went in front of the judge after arguing the petition against the Champion Mortgages bank rep and their attorney and the judge. So anyway, long story short, judge denied the petition, pretty much ignored it is what he did. And I said that I would appeal it, and he foreclosed on the home. Same day later, they auctioned off the home, and it was sold back to the bank that had this lien on the property for about $130,000, and the property was worth $42,000. So it was upside down beyond 100%. And really, I'll leave it to you to make sense of how that even happens. Okay, but that wasn't the argument. The argument in the petition was that the judge did not have the right to hear that case once it was challenged, because real title is still held in the Secretary of State for the 50 union states within the United States of America. So anyway, again, judge foreclosed, granted the final judgment of foreclosure, and then sold it within the auction that same day. Okay, and the bank Champion ended up purchasing it back for something like $100. Okay, so that was that. So then I put the appeal in, appealed it with the final judgment and the sale with the petition, and that was that. Now, 9 months later, September 15th, 2015, the appellate court decides to vacate the sale and the, just making sure I have more time here. I'm trying to make it short. Vacating the sale and the final judgment of foreclosure. And still have the house to this day. My father-in-law passed away. And my mother-in-law, his two daughters, Kim and Tabitha, they still live in the house that Tabitha grew up in. And that's to be continued. So that's the first case that we're going to go ahead and talk about. And I'm really not going to hide the first names on that, because it's checkmate on that case. But that's to be continued. Anyway, so back to the notes, right? The notes. This started off to be notes for myself, letting us know the organization, TMI, by the way, Truth Ministries Incorporated. There's our plug. Yeah, well, that story was a little emotional because it touched home, and it's true to my heart. But we're going to take facts from cases that are ongoing. We're going to present them, and we're going to educate people on ongoing pro se litigations, with, again, keeping the names private on those ongoing cases. Hopefully to give the public some knowledge of their civil rights and how they can apply them. Well, anyway, thank the Lord Jesus this February 28th, 2016. And we'll be back with the further report of the ongoing case of my father-in-law. Left off 9/15/2015's results of the appellate court overturning the sale and the final judgment. God bless America.